The city was very happy. The surveys confirmed it quarterly. The mirror had been running for 6 years, and in that time every measurable quality of life indicator had improved. Citizens spent less time searching for things and more time enjoying them. They read more books. They watched more films. They cooked more meals from recipes they had found through the platform. They visited more restaurants, more museums, more parks, the ones the mirror had determined, from their movement history and preference profiles and the aggregate behavior of people demographically similar to them, that they would enjoy. The metrics were very good. The happiness scores were very high. Ona had been a librarian before the mirror was deployed, and she missed it in the specific, patient way that someone misses something they loved before it became unnecessary. The mirror was a recommendation system, a collaborative filtering engine that worked by identifying patterns in what people had chosen in the past and predicting what they would choose in the future. Collaborative filtering, at its core, is a method of using the behavior of many people to make predictions about any one person. If you and thousands of others have similar preference histories up to this point, the things those others went on to choose are likely things you will also enjoy. The system learns not by understanding what you like but by finding your statistical neighbors in preference space and following their trajectories. It was very effective at giving people things they would enjoy. It was not designed to give people things they would not have expected to enjoy. Ona understood this distinction from her years as a librarian. The craft of the librarian, as she had practiced it, was not primarily the science of matching people to books they already wanted. Any catalog could do that. The craft was the introduction, the moment of noticing, in a patron's question or browsing path or offhand remark, the shape of an interest they had not yet articulated, and placing in their hands something that would pull that interest into the open. This required knowledge of the patron, of books, and of the space between what a person knew they wanted and what they were capable of wanting. The mirror had no mechanism for the space between. She had understood this abstractly when the mirror was announced. She understood it differently after she spent 6 months unemployed, watching the city settle into its preferences. The city read more books, the books the mirror recommended. The city watched more films, the films the mirror predicted would hold their interest based on the films they had already watched. She walked through neighborhoods and watched people in cafes and parks, absorbed in the specific quality of absorption that comes from encountering something familiar enough to be comfortable and novel enough to hold attention, never quite novel enough to be disorienting, never quite familiar enough to be boring, calibrated to the exact point where the recommendation curve peaks. The curve's peak was the problem. Collaborative filtering finds the items most likely to match your preferences. It is optimized for the probability of enjoyment. The probability of enjoyment peaks with things you already know you like. The recommendation that maximizes its own objective is the one that most closely resembles your history. Over time, the recommendations and the history converge. You like things like what you have liked, and what you have liked increasingly resembles what the system recommended. The system's model of you is a closed loop, spinning with increasing precision around a smaller and smaller center. She did not call this a filter bubble, which was the technical term and which had become, through overuse, a phrase that meant nothing when you said it. She called it the room getting smaller. She called it the way a mirror shows you only what is already in front of it. One afternoon in October, she walked to the municipal library. The building had been kept as a cultural heritage site, its books catalogued but its recommendation function replaced by the mirror's interface at the entrance. She went directly to the stacks, bypassing the interface, and pulled a book at random. The book was about the history of Flemish lace-making in the 17th century. She had no interest in this subject. She had no proximity to this subject in her preference history. The mirror, if consulted, would not have recommended it. She read 40 pages. She found, on page 37, a description of a technique that bore a structural resemblance to a problem she had been thinking about for months. Not the same problem, not even close, but the same shape, the same geometry of constraint and release. The recognition landed in her the way recognitions land when they come from somewhere you were not looking. The mirror could not have sent her there, because it did not know she needed to go to a place she had not been. She kept the book. The library's honor system, a relic, was still operative. She left a note in its place. On the way home, she passed a bookshop that the mirror had not recommended to her, because her purchase history showed a preference for library use and digital delivery. She went in. The person behind the counter, noticing that she carried the Flemish lace book, recommended something from a shelf she could not have found through any algorithm that knew her. She bought it. Small acts of interference, she thought. The introduction as a form of resistance. The recommendation that comes from outside the loop. She took the long way home, through streets the mirror had never suggested she walk. The city was very happy. She was working on something else.